Number 1, number 2, number 3, you're going to need 3 things. What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to Cow Architecture. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to get licensed in the United States. If you find this video helpful or enjoyable in any way, please like and subscribe. I come out with architecture related videos every single week, so make sure to hit the bell notification for a new video. So let's get into it a little bit further. You're going to need 3 things. Number 1 is get a graduate degree from a NAAB accredited graduate program. You can get that from a number of ways. I will put a link up here to the top rated schools in the United States. All right, so we're looking up NAAB accredited graduate program. So I just typed in NAAB accredited degree program for architecture. If I just type in NAAB, that's already related to architecture, so I don't even need to say architectural. So I'll click on that school search. And here it brings me to all the schools that are NAAB accredited. And so just for looking at a few, in New York, there's Columbia, Cornell. All these are accredited. Top architecture schools in the country are Cornell, USC, LA, Berkeley, and on niche.com, it's Rice, Cornell, Washington, USC, Yale. The typical Ivies. Back to the NAAB site, it'll break down their website and the degree program. So you want to pay attention to how many hours you'll need. So 95 credit hours if you did your bachelor in architecture, and that's roughly 3 years. But for this program, if you didn't do architecture in your undergrad, could be as much as 4 years. It will also tell you when they were last accredited and when they're going to be checked again, because the curriculum always changes. So you want to make sure it's up to date with the current sustainability and design standards. Another school is Cornell, which I found it interesting that the bachelor is 5 years and still the graduate program is 3.5. So if you're not looking to be in grad school for 3.5 and another 5, there are other options where they only have 2. So the University of Texas, Austin, I believe, is a 2-year program. Yeah, so 66 credit hours, like that's going to be if you had architecture and bachelor. So you'll get through that in easily 2 years. And I think the extra 6 actually is a summer course that you'll need to take maybe between the first and second year. Number 2, get internship hours, roughly 4,000 over 6 categories, same as the tests. I would recommend trying to do it in undergrad, but if you can get it in grad or even after graduate, that's fine. But if you want to get ahead and try to get licensed as quick as possible, you're going to need to try to get that internship as early as you can. So I'm over looking at the internship hours, and here you can see, this might be before your time, but before the A.R.E 5.0, you had to do 4 different categories for your internship hours. And this matrix shows how they fit into now these 6 new categories. And so basically the pre-design is now in between practice management, project management, and programming and analysis. And then if you're doing more DD level stuff, that's project planning and design, but also materials. And then basically construction documents is all the PDD, project development and documentation. And construction eval is the same. It's in that project management area, but it's all after the design documentation is done. And so here's my NCARB report, kind of showing all the different categories. And the biggest one is the PDD, so the construction documentation. That's the easiest to get in when you first get into an internship, and probably the last one that you'll actually finish because you need so many hours, roughly 1,500 hours. And the practice management, project management, I remember those being some of the harder ones because you're not really doing a lot of front-end work on projects. You're usually doing red lines, so make sure to try to get in those meetings with your project manager and get those hours. And then construction eval is another hard one too, because you might just be working in the office, whereas you might not be going on site because the project architect usually does that, but you can ask to go with them and it counts for your hours. And so I typed in the NCARB 6 categories, and it brings up this AXP guide that I'll put in the link description down below. And it talks about exactly where you can get this experience from. So for project management, it'll show you all the tasks that can be basically used to get this experience. So determine a fee budget. So even if you're not doing that yourself, you can work with that with your project manager and you can count those towards your internship hours. Let's go down a little further. So construction evaluation, some tasks of those. So if you're responding to an RFI, even if you're not doing that yourself, your project manager or project architect can be doing that, but you can ask them how they did that or ask them what they had to do, and you can count that towards your hours. Even if you're not billing it to the client, if you talk about it with your coworker, you can count that towards your hours because you're learning about it, and you will one day do it by yourself too. And number 3, the tests. I made a video on 9 easy steps to help you pass the 6 A.R.E 5.0 tests.
Basically, if you're in that thinking mindset, education from graduate school, I would suggest rolling that into exam testing.
So I'm on the NCARB site still looking at the testing. And as you can see, I passed all the tests. And this shows when you passed it, and also if you failed it, it will have a score report on that. I failed 2 of them, so you look on here almost 24 hours after you take the test, and you can look at the score report and see what you did on the test. And then if I type in the A.R.E. 5.0 handbook, which is probably the #1 guide you'll need to look through, it'll give you some practice exam questions for each section, and also kind of tell you what you should expect in terms of different types of questions. Once again, I would say black spectacles is probably the best for taking a mock exam, but I would also look at these practice questions on this handbook before you start studying and also right before you take the test. It also tells you the number of items on the test, the number of items that are actually scored, and then the time you get. And I don't really look at the total duration, I look at the test duration. So 2 hours, 40 minutes for practice management. And the total items is 65, 59 are scored, and 10 to 14 of those are case studies. So that might be 1 or 2 case studies. And generally I like to focus on the bigger sections. So the section 2, finance, risk, development of practice. That would make more sense to put more of your study time in those sections versus some of the smaller ones like practice, methodologies. Even though you're still going to get questions on those, maybe prioritize the bigger sections first. Make sure you get through those and then go to the smaller ones. NCARB does update this handbook every few months, so just make sure you have the most up-to-date one. And you can kind of go through it and see different types of questions. I remember this one for PA. You're supposed to say where you should put the building based on the floodplain, so you need to know how to read this map. And then it'll tell you where the correct area is, and then the rationale. They'll describe why that's right. And the AE, the types of questions, I don't read too much into that, but it's kind of interesting to know which questions you might be better on.
And there you have it. Those are the 3 things that you need to get licensed in the United States. A little bit easier said than done. So roughly on the graduate degree, we're looking at 2 to 4 years almost. A little bit more than I thought. I would say a good rule of thumb is 3 years. And if you did your bachelor in architecture, your graduate program could be as low as 2 years, but as much as 4 at some of the prestigious universities. Next are the internship hours. I said 2 to 5 because you might be doing this during school, which is just part-time, and full-time's on the summers and Christmas breaks. But I would say if you're doing it full-time, 2 years, but if you're doing it with school, the total internship hours might be around 5 years. And the A.R.E. tests, that can be as little as 3 weeks to 6 years, all dependent on where you are in your life and how fast you really want to do it. Technically, you can take your A.R.E. test right after high school, but probably wouldn't recommend that because you don't really know much because you didn't take college classes and internship hours. In my previous video, I talked about how you might need internship hours to take the test, but it's sometimes not necessary because it might hinder you in some ways by bringing in your real life experience, and that doesn't always help you because you're taking the test based on NCARB's utopian bubble of what they think the architecture world is. So the A.R.E. test can be from 1 to 6 years with an average maybe about 3 years. Total, to get licensed in the United States as an architect, you're looking at 5 years on the low end, up to 10 years on the high end, and maybe more if you took more time in between tests. Thanks for watching, guys. If you appreciated it in any way, please like and subscribe. It'd be greatly appreciated so we can get this out to as many test takers, architecture school goers as possible. And with that, see you in the next video.